Hello, welcome back to Inform New Hampshire. Today is 9/19/18, Wednesday, and hopefully we've got a good show for you. This is called Wake Up America. But before we get into the show, I'd like to continue asking you to pray for Jerry DeLemus and his wife. So hopefully some of the stuff that you're going to see today is going to show you why Jerry's in jail. It's not because of anything he's done wrong. It's because of our system. It's a total fraud, number one. And the people that are running our country and our state are organized crime. That's why an innocent man sits in prison. More than one innocent man, but we'll be specific to Jerry DeLemus. Secondly, I'd like to ask that you help out the National Liberty Alliance. They're an organization that is genuinely trying to help. One of the big things that they're trying to do now is print, I forget the exact number now, 80,000 copies of a 75-page book that they want to distribute, 20 copies to each sheriff, which is 3,133 copies. And obviously it requires money to have it printed, and it requires money to have it shipped. So if you could find it in your heart to send National Liberty Alliance some money for that purpose, and also if you don't have the money and you want to spend an hour helping, sign up as a member and let the person in your state, the coordinators, know. Tell them you're anxious to work. They need all kinds of help. This is a fight to save this country. So I would ask that everybody that's a patriot, or anybody that cares for that matter, there should be one and the same, get involved with the National Liberty Alliance. You can go to nationallibertyalliance.org and sign up as a member there. It doesn't cost you anything to be a member, but if you can afford to send some money, it's appreciative. And one of the things I neglected to say for quite some time is they have a Constitution course and a civics course that both you and your children can take for free. Now, I strongly recommend that everybody in the United States take it. It's an outstanding, it's a 120-hour course. You don't have to sit there, obviously, and take it all at once. It took me months to do it. You do it an hour or two here or there until you get it done. It marks your place every time you take the course, so you don't have to go back and find your own spot. It remembers where you left off. Anyway, it's a very good program. Check it out, see what you think. I think you'll find it very helpful, especially if you got, say, junior high kids for the civics program. It's something that these kids need today. So try to share it with them if you would, and help out with National Liberty Alliance. Like I said, the show today is about Wake Up America. At least that's what I'm calling it. A couple of the things that you're going to see, well, you're going to see two videos. The first one is an irate, I don't know if he's a newscaster or if he was someone just being interviewed, but you'll see he's kind of fed up with what's going on, and I'm surprised that more Americans aren't in that category. I'm not saying that anything, you should be out there doing anything crazy, but you should be irate about what's going on in this country. And hopefully this first clip will demonstrate that. It's only 4 or 5 minutes long. I think 4 minutes and some odd seconds. So we could go to that first clip and we can talk about it when we come back.
We owe $70 trillion.
Yeah, I understand that, but
to walk out a $4 trillion solution, which is basically just a way for the Democrats to avoid dealing with this until 2017. I'm not here to talk about plans to deal with this till 2017. I'm saying we've got a real problem, and I'm tired of Republicans and Democrats who Republicans who want to burn the place to the ground, and Democrats, with all due respect, who want to offer a plan that gets it through their end of their second term of their presidency, and then screws me and my kids when it's over. And until we do that, we have to deal with the extraction that is at foot. It is the reason the financial markets are behaving the way they're behaving. That is a mathematical fact. This is not some opinion. This is a mathematical fact. tens of trillions of dollars are being extracted from the United States of America. Democrats aren't doing it. Republicans are not doing it. An entire integrated system, financial system, trading system, taxing system that was created by both parties over a period of 2 decades is at work on our entire country right now. And we're sitting here arguing about whether we should do the $4 trillion plan that kicks the can down the road for the president for 2017 or burn the place to the ground, both of which are reckless, irresponsible, and stupid. And the fact of the matter is, until we actually, and I'm sorry to lose my temper, but I tell you what, I've been coming on TV for 3 years doing this. And the fact of the matter is that there's a refusal on both the Democratic and the Republican side of the aisle to acknowledge the mathematical problem, which is that the United States of America is being extracted. It's being extracted through banking, it's being extracted through trade, and it's being extracted through taxation. And there's not a single politician that has stepped forward, Susan, to deal with this.
But there's only one right now. The leader of the free world, whether you like it or not, the President of the United States is arguably one of the most powerful individuals we have out there.
But
and
Susan,
he's our
what you're saying is exactly the point that Dylan is making. It's not about one guy. It's about all of them.
No, I actually disagree. I think Dylan's saying it is about one guy.
It is about one guy.
What would you like him to do?
I would like him to go to the people of the United States of America and say, people of the United States of America, your Congress is bought. Your Congress is incapable of making legislation on health care, banking, trade, or taxes, because if they do it, they will lose their political funding, and they won't do it. But I'm the President of the United States, and I won't have a country that is run by a bought Congress. So I'm not going to work with a bought Congress and try to be Mr. Big Guy. I'm working with the bought Congress. I'm going to abandon the bought Congress like Teddy Roosevelt did, and I'm going to go to the people of the United States, and I'm going to say, you've got a bought Congress. And until we get rid of the bought Congress, which is Jimmy Williams' constant point, which is get the money out of politics, and until a president says that's the problem and says he's going to fix it, there is no policy that I can possibly see, no matter how brilliant your idea may be, or your idea, or my idea, or her idea, or your idea at home, is that idea will not happen as long as there's the capacity to basically fire a politician who disagrees with me by taking funding away from him. Is that a fair assessment?
Money in politics is the root of all political evil. It is corruption at its worst. And until we step up and kick that out of the park, it's going to be the same system all
and only the president could do that. We're going to
No. Congress has to do it too. The Congress has to do it too.
But I'll tell you what. How bad does it have to get? How much money has to be extracted? How many things have to be heard?
Down to brass tacks. Okay, physically, what do? You
go and give a speech
right now.
right now.
Right now.
You say.
And then what happens tomorrow?
Tomorrow, what happens is you begin the process of actually investing in solving the problem. So I come out and I say, how? I create an infrastructure bank with 2% blending immediately. There's that. Once I explain to people the problem, once I explain to you have cancer, once you understand how screwed up your trade, tax, and banking policies are, believe me, you will have no issue when I incorporate an infrastructure bank that I fund with repatriated offshore money that I bring in and then use to create 2% direct lending to every business in America. Because when you realize that the banking system is fully corrupt and defrauding us, and I come out and say that, which is what I want my president to do, that at that exact moment I say, you know what, we got a screwed up situation here, people. You all know it, and now what? I'm going to admit it. And as a result, not only have I admitted it, but we're going to begin the process of solving it like grown-ups. They did it in World War II. They did it after the Civil War. They did it in Latin America with the Brady bonds. We are not seeing it happen now. The panel stays a little more emotional than I anticipated getting at work this afternoon, but what am I going to do? We owe $70 trillion.
Well, that's kind of my sentiments exactly. I feel like doing that on this show sometimes is just exploding and letting you know that there is a serious problem out there, because there is. Our country's under a coup d'etat. There are evil people who have been in control of this country trying to take it over. And I got a couple of corrections for you. The gentleman who just had a rant said that this has been going on for 20 years. It's been going on for centuries. And the next clip will discuss that a little bit more. There was one other point, and I can't recall what it was right now. Oh, referring to saying that Mr. Trump can, or any president, can solve the problem to me, is wrong. Only the people can save this country, and that's what the National Liberty Alliance's major slogan is on their website. I'm not saying that to sell them again. However, this is our country. You know, people are at the top of the food chain on planet Earth. It's our country. It's our government. It's our rights. It's our money. Everything belongs to the people. Now, I disagree with that in that it's been stolen from us and we don't own it anymore. But just because someone stole it doesn't mean we can't get it back. We should be attempting to do that through the banking system, through the taxes that we don't have to pay, but we do because we're under threat of arrest and thrown in prison. All of these issues need to be addressed by the people. And if the people continue to slumber and say, well, I got to get another job because I can't afford this, my car cost $1,000 or $1,500 to fix this week, and I don't have that much money. All of these things, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The reason that the costs are out of sight is because of the banking system. But rather than go into a tirade on that, I want to show you the next video. However, I will make an apology for the video. I think what this gentleman says is very, very good, only he's extremely monotone. And try to sit through it. It's 12 minutes, and I think you'll enjoy what he has to say. Pay attention to it, though, please.
In 1868, the 14th Amendment was ratified, ending slavery by giving all Americans citizenship. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. United States Code annotated Amendment 14. However, what the public was not told, that while under the Lieber Code, a 14th Amendment citizen can only be found within the jurisdiction of the United States. That is, all government employees, all those who live in territories occupied by the federal government, such as Washington, D.C., and the former slaves. The rest of the population was not subject to the 14th Amendment, and thus could still claim jurisdiction under the original Constitution. In addition to that, after the conclusion of the Civil War, the federal government was now occupying the southern states, placing these captured citizens under the jurisdiction of the Lieber Code. The southern states had to agree to ratify this amendment in order for them to be granted their freedom from federal rule. Thus, instead of ending slavery, the 14th Amendment held all Southerners captive as slaves in the plantation known as the United States of America. Just like how all citizens were turned into corporations in 1790 to subject them to the Revolutionary War debts, 14th Amendment citizens were created to be franchisees subject to the corporation known as the United States Incorporated. And like all corporate brands, you do not have any constitutional Bill of Rights protections. Proof of such can be found in the all-caps version of your name, which signifies a corporate entity. After the Civil War, the United States defaulted on its war debt. During the bankruptcy proceedings, cunning lawyers and League of International Bankers found a loophole within Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the United States Constitution, which allowed the creation of a duplicate entity known as the Corporation of the United States of America to replace the now bankrupt and defunct Republic of the United States of America. This occurred with the passage of the District of Columbia Organic Act of 1871, which incorporated the area of the District of Columbia into a private foreign corporation chartered in the City of London known as the United States Incorporated. This corporation designated Congress as the board of directors to continue the business needs of the government under martial law. Thanks to the Lieber Code, federal jurisdiction under the Organic Act was expanded to include not only all captured citizens in the southern states, but all Americans in all states. Thus, America had lost her sovereignty under the yoke of the Crown of England and the international bankers. During this same time, the Corporation of the United States adopted its own constitution, which was identical to the original national constitution. To fool the people, one word was changed from its original form, the Constitution for the United States of America, to its present-day all-capitalized form, which signifies a corporate entity, the Constitution of the United States of America. Incidentally, the Titles of Nobility Amendment was removed from this new Constitution. With the Illuminati in full control over the United States, they now sought to rule the world. After the death of Adam Weishaupt in 1830, Giuseppe Mazzini was selected to head the Illuminati. In 1871, the mantle of power was passed on again to the American General Albert Pike as its new director. Pike became fascinated with the idea of a one-world government and eventually constructed the Illuminati's blueprint of world domination. His plans called for the financing of 3 world wars in the 20th century. The First War would bring about an atheist communist state from the ashes of Tsarist Russia. The Second War would bring about a Jewish Holocaust under a fascist government to foment support of a Zionist state of Israel. The Third War would manipulate the differences of Christians and Muslims for their own annihilation. Then finally, political Zionism would come out as victors of all. These 3 world wars would require enormous funding. Since most of the royalty in Europe was already deeply in debt thanks to the numerous wars and conflicts created by the Rothschild banking dynasty, the only place left that could possibly pay for such ambitious plans was the now prosperous American Republic. After the Civil War, the United States went through a great industrial expansion. The new industries of oil, steel, textile, and railroad all needed generous financing, which the Rothschild family was more than eager to provide. To access these markets, the Rothschilds sent their agent, Jacob Schiff, to infiltrate the New York banking scene, which was controlled by J.P. Morgan. By the turn of the century, the Rothschilds had fully entrenched themselves into the tight fraternity of Wall Street banks, such as Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers. They now sought their most prized possession, full control over the American monetary system. With help from Jacob Schiff and J.P. Morgan, the Rothschilds formed a scheme which would seduce Congress into relinquishing control over the money supply. This occurred with the Panic of 1907, when a liquidity crisis caused many banks and businesses to fail all across the United States. The meltdown began when J.P. Morgan published rumors that the Knickerbocker Trust Company of New York was insolvent. With a bank run on hand, they were forced to call in their loans, creating a chain reaction which would threaten to implode the entire banking system. The failures continued until J.P. Morgan & Company provided a generous loan to the insolvent banks. But J.P. Morgan was not trying to save the American banking system, but rather he used the crisis to destroy his competition by choosing which banks he would bail out. But the biggest casualty of the economic fallout was the looming bankruptcy of the Corporation of the United States, which had no means to pay back their loans, which were due in 1912. In anticipation of this bankruptcy, representatives from the world's most powerful families met in November 1910 at a secret meeting at the Jekyll Island Club Resort in Georgia to discuss the foreclosure of the Corporation of the United States and to brainstorm solutions which would prevent future liquidity crises such as occurred during the Panic of 1907. Those in attendance included Senator Nelson Aldrich, Paul Warburg, representatives from J.P. Morgan & Company, and Jacob Schiff, representing the Rothschild family. They proposed a 20-year extension on the national debt if the United States would agree to charter a privately owned central bank which would serve as a bank of last resort by lending money to other insolvent banks in order to prevent future bank runs. A week later, they emerged with their plans to create what is known as the Federal Reserve System. Because the current President Taft would never agree to sign away the American monetary system to a cabal of international bankers, they waited until they got their man, the progressive Woodrow Wilson, into power. In return for the bankers' generous campaign contributions, Woodrow Wilson reluctantly promised the bankers he would sign the Federal Reserve Act if he was elected into office. Many powerful forces were opposed to the creation of a privately controlled central bank. To neutralize this threat, J.P. Morgan invited the major opponents of the Federal Reserve Act on board the maiden voyage of the newly built Titanic luxury steamliner built by the White Star Line, owned by J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan ordered the captain to steer his ship into an iceberg and under gunpoint prevented the men from escaping onto the lifeboats, killing many of his enemies in one large swoop. When word of this got back to Woodrow Wilson, he commented, "There exists this power in the world, so subtle, so organized, so watchful, that we dare not speak above a whisper when we speak in condemnation of it." At the beginning of 1913, the United States had defaulted on its debt. After being denied a new line of credit, the now President Woodrow Wilson faced a constitutional crisis. With no other sources of funding, he went along with the banker's schemes engineered at the Jekyll Island resort. To avoid any opposition, Senator Nelson Aldrich quickly pushed the Federal Reserve Act through both houses of Congress. On December 23, 1913, while most of Congress was away on Christmas vacation, a quorum call was issued. A few selected congressional traitors voted by voice to avoid public record and passed the Federal Reserve Act, which President Wilson signed into law. Wilson later admitted with remorse when referring to the Fed, "I have unwittingly ruined my country." This act gave away the keys of the printing presses at the U.S. Treasury to a foreign corporation chartered under the Crown of England, known as the Federal Reserve Bank.
The Federal Reserve was created by Congress in 1913, and it was entrusted with the power granted originally to the Congress by the U.S. Constitution to coin money and regulate the value thereof.
The Federal Reserve Bank advertises itself as a non-profit corporation that operates as if it's another branch of the government. However, its board members are unelected, and their meetings are conducted behind the closed doors, away from public scrutiny.
The board of directors of the Federal Reserve System is chosen by the president from a list prepared by the bankers themselves.
It's important that whomever I pick is viewed as an independent person from politics.
All this secrecy becomes very suspicious, considering how the Federal Reserve monitors and controls trillions of dollars within the world's banking system. After the federal government lost its ability to issue its own money, the national debt soon soared to astronomical heights, because now the government had to pay the Federal Reserve interest on all its currency printed to circulation. But this interest on the national debt could never be repaid, as the Federal Reserve required all debts to be repaid with gold, which the government did not have. And even worse, the interest portion of the national debt was not issued into the money supply. In other words, more and more debt would have to be issued to continue servicing the growing interest payments on all loans. In order to cover this interest payment, Congress was forced to pass the income tax legislation, which became law in 1913 with the ratification of the 16th Amendment, also known as the Income Tax Amendment. Initially, they levied a 1% voluntary tax on all incomes over $3,000 and a progressive surtax on all incomes over $20,000, but this would soon increase with the outbreak of World War I and World War II. Income tax allowed the Federal Reserve System to confiscate the earnings of the common man, but the industrialists and financiers were exempted from paying any income tax because they could afford to hide their assets in tax-free foundations which they claimed were devoted to philanthropy. Examples of such include the Rockefeller Foundation, the Mellon Foundation, and the Carnegie Endowment.
The main purpose of the income tax is not to raise revenue, but to redistribute wealth and to control society.
Technically, the 16th Amendment was not ratified by the necessary states, as it violates the constitutional clause of no direct taxes. Despite this, Congress went ahead and taxed the people anyway. The government was able to do this because under their corporate charter, Congress was operating as the board of directors, and therefore they had the authority to enter this amendment as ratified. But remember, this amendment has nothing to do with the original United States Constitution, which was replaced back in 1871 with the corporate constitution.
It's actually very simple. Congress tried to enact an income tax in 1894. The Supreme Court said that's unconstitutional. When the Supreme Court says something is unconstitutional, it's unconstitutional. They tried again in 1913, and the Supreme Court said the 16th Amendment conferred no new power of taxation. So, if they didn't have it then, and they didn't get it, they don't have it. There is no constitutional basis for a tax on the wages of Americans living and working in the 50 states of the Union. Period. End of.
Well, one of the things they said in that clip was, you shouldn't speak above a whisper about these people that are doing this. I disagree with that. You should be shouting from the rooftops about the corruption that's going on planet Earth. That's how big all of this is, and it's been hidden for years. In order to find it, I mean, there are people that blaze the trail. I'm not sitting here one of those trailblazers. People have blazed the trail before me. I just learned from them. But the information that you just heard was factual. What they've done is they've taken, and I'll illustrate a couple things for you, and I talk about our ignorance. It is our ignorance. I'm not calling anybody stupid. Ignorant means you're unaware, not familiar with. Having said that, they changed a citizen of the United States of America, which we all are, in dual citizenship under 14th Amendment. They've changed it to, they made the United States, not of America, but the United States a corporation. And now on your voter registration card, it says right at the very top, are you a U.S. citizen? And you check it off. You say, yeah, I was born in one of the states united. That's not what they're asking you. They're asking you if you're a U.S. citizen, a corporate citizen, so that they can have jurisdiction over you. It's all done through fraud and deceit, all of it. And by the way, when you say that you are a citizen of the United States of America, that's a capital C, and citizen is the proper noun. When you're talking about what they do, a United States citizen, they use a small c, and the United States is the proper noun.
2 minutes.
This is the way they play at doing this. I take exception with one of the things the gentleman said at the end of the video, and lawyers don't seem to know this very well. The Supreme Court doesn't interpret it. He said if the Supreme Court says it's unconstitutional, it is. No, that's not quite right. Under common law, the people are the ones who determine it. It's called the trial by jury. And I'll defend that statement in front of any attorney in the state of New Hampshire or anybody else that wants to come on who went to law school. A trial by jury. We the people determine what is lawful and what isn't lawful. So if you're not familiar with the Libra Code, if you're not familiar with the Congressional Act of 1871 or the, what do you call it? The, I'm sorry. The money bill in 1913, I'm sorry, the Federal Reserve Act, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. These are the things that you have to know. Everything was done through fraud to enslave us all. And when they did the bankruptcy in 1933, the president turned around and says, okay, well, we're going to go bankrupt and you can take care of all this, Mr. Federal Reserve. We will put the people up as chattel. And that's why you pay an income tax to this corporation, which in turn, by the way, the money doesn't go to the government. It goes to the Federal Reserve Bank. Please watch this. Please share this. I'm here trying to help my fellow Americans, inform them. This is not a joke. This is very serious. Your country's at risk today. Thank you for watching. God bless, and please share.